Hey, Bobby Manning here. We are live back in TD Garden. It's been about 4 or 5 months since we last did a playoff game here for CLNS Media, so we are back in the house, still high above. We'll be back on the floor eventually. As you can see, they're doing a Bruins game within the next day or so, so I stayed way up here in the heavens, and the noise percolating up to the perimeter of the stadium here. They're in that fourth quarter run, down by 10, going an 11-point run behind Peyton Pritchard, Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith. Almost felt like I was back in Vegas. I just forgot to wear the hat. And it was raining. It was bad outside, so I said no hat. The mood's not there. I didn't need to keep the sun off myself, but everything else felt like Vegas. Once the fourth quarter hit here, the crowd was going nuts. A real good atmosphere here for this first game with a new feel-good team. Not many other things felt good out of this one. Nothing to really grasp to. And we know Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown in this 98-97 win over the Magic were outstanding. Jaylen has that 16-point outburst in the first few minutes, showing a little bit of everything. Jason Tatum smashed a dunk down on Wendell Carter's head and played with great power, force, drew free throws, and hit shots throughout this one. So Tatum, Brown, we know what we have in them here when it comes to the Celtics. Didn't need to answer much and ultimately delivered what you wanted to see from the two stars on this team. Now, the first interesting thing out of this game is Juancho Hernangomez starting. Ime Udoka, of course, said don't read into it, but you do read into the line of thinking there. Why do you want a Hernangomez in the starting lineup? You think of different things, size, versatility on the perimeter. The big one for me, though, is shooting. Hernangomez is the guy at that 4 spot who has a shooting pedigree. He's had some decent shooting stretches throughout his career, including a 40% stretch with the Timberwolves in one half of a season, I believe, was his height as a shooter at that 4 position. Didn't shoot great last year and really hasn't over the course of his career at 33%. And we didn't see it here again today. Some good hustle on the boards, some banging. He's a guy, you put him in the Olympics with Team Spain, you throw the Spain jersey on him. He's going to do things in that environment and that style of play that I think really conducive to winning. But in this environment, spacing, shooting, and speed, frankly, not his fortes. And you saw him a little behind on rotations throughout the course of this game. I don't think Hernangomez is the answer at the 4, but it does speak to my second thing that comes out of this game. 35% shooting from the field, 35% shooting from 3, which was lower through the portions of the game that really mattered here, more like 33% from 3. The spacing on this team's a little bit of a mess. They're grasping for some shooting at that final position in the starting lineup, and I think they're going to have an array of guys rotate through there to see what's going to be the best floor spacing option for us when it comes to rounding out the starting lineup. Brown and Tatum are good shooters, but you want them with space to operate. Marcus Smart in his first game as a point guard with this team didn't really operate as the catch-and-shoot guy. I think he had 1 catch-and-shoot shot in that new role that he's taking on this year. So who's going to be the floor spacer for this team? Does Grant Williams get a look? Wouldn't be stunned. Does Peyton Pritchard in a smaller lineup get a look here? Wouldn't be stunned. Now, Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, 2 guys that I think are firmly in that bench category as the Celtics do look for some balance here. Struggled immensely to shoot in this one, especially Richardson, whose form, approach, and base looked off throughout large stretches of this game on his way to 1-8 shooting. Not a great debut for Richardson on the offensive or defensive end of the floor, and he's a possibility in the mix in the 2 guard spot with 2 forwards and a center, but didn't look like the answer tonight in that regard. So ultimately, do you rest on Al Horford, who Ime said we know what he brings, and we saw what he brings here, looking almost like the old Al. Not explosive stat line. I believe he just had 5 points, 7 rebounds. Not something that would blow you away for a player making that kind of money, but the feel, the steadiness, and the reliability that he brings to a game, as well as the passing and transition and the ability to run the floor, which Ime emphasized heavily this week. Horford drew a little buzz from this crowd when he came into the game. There was a real energy to this guy who was so good, so reliable, such a feel-good player on the teams that won when in his time here. To finally have something stable back after the year that this team just had, I think was a reason that this place got so loud and excited to finally see the Celtics playing basketball again. And Al was strong in this one, on the boards, pushing the pace, moving the ball. I think those are all things he brings to the table. But is he a floor spacer? His three-point percentage has gotten better each of the last 4 years, I believe, as Taylor Snow pointed out. But in volume, is he a guy that you want jacking a ton of threes? Maybe that's what he can remake himself as this year, but I don't think that's ever been who Horford is. I think Horford is a steady player who can play different positions and do different things on the floor, not overload too much on any one role. And I think taking 6-7 threes a game for him would be a difficult role to fill in. Frankly, the guy down the stretch of this game who led the win with his passing and his shooting, Peyton Pritchard, is going to be a really important player, a swing player on this team, I think, when it comes to the shooting and the offense that this group's going to need, and the spacing, frankly. I'm interested to see if he gets a look in one of these games as a starting player. I think he is the best shooter on this team by far. And who knows, Langford with his game winner, shot well in Summer League, 3-and-D kind of player who plays more of a wing position. Maybe he gets a look. Maybe all of a sudden Langford becomes a guy who is at the bottom of this roster, and a shot like that thrusts him up into a bigger opportunity. Someone who is obviously facing a major opportunity this year, and you could feel the weight of it on him this week. The tears that he described and his family members described to me in my BSJ feature about Robert Williams signing his extension. You could see the pressure that he was playing with out here and that he described this week in practice. Starting center on this team, for this game at least, 0-7, which is by and far the worst shooting performance from the field of his career. Tried to shoot a couple jumpers, one a leaning one against Gary Harris, I believe, posting him up. Nothing we've ever really seen Robert Williams try. And, we've seen him do some pick and pop with Jalen, which is what he tried to do on one of his misses here. Missed it. Not a terrible miss and not a terrible play. But Ime said after the game, you got to get Rob going to the basket more, get him downhill and do his bread and butter as he described it, which is not something we saw Rob comfortable with throughout stretches of this one. He went up for an alley-oop. Mo Bamba, who surprised, I think, the basketball world with some solid play here in this game, as he's kind of on his last chance with the Magic at least, went up there and met Rob at the rim, rejected him on an early alley-oop, and then worse, Rob kind of got himself in great position on a dump-off from Brown later in the game and got blocked from behind by Jalen Suggs. So Robert Williams, a guy who had never missed 4 shots, period, in a game before this, a guy who has a 70% field goal percentage throughout his career, kind of unsteady, throwing a bad alley-oop from the high post to Tatum on another play here, forcing the issue a little bit. 0-7 from Rob was startling, maybe not indicative of what's to come from him, but again, something we've never really seen from that player. Is he a little heavy coming into this camp, gaining some weight? Is the same verticality not there? Those are things I'm going to be looking for. I don't think that's necessarily the answer to a game like this, but Rob way off his game in this one, and the Celtics largely went with Horford as he struggled to get himself going and looked much better in those Horford lineups going forward. Could be a real competition there at the center spot. I think that is definitely within play. And maybe Rob finds greater comfort with some guards who are able to get him balls in the spots that he enjoys, like Pritchard did throughout much of the last year that they spent together. So I think if they're splitting even time, it doesn't really matter who starts. It's just about who fits together best on the floor. And at least for now, Al Horford looked to be the better fit at the 5 position for this team. The Celtics play the Raptors on Saturday. Back here at TD Garden, we will have coverage post-game, throughout the game, and of course live here at TD Garden in person. Make sure you check out legends.com. The campaign is running out of time. You heard us talking about it on the Garden Report tonight. 4 days left as I record this. October 8th is the last day to get 20% off your order and support the Garden Report. White camo, you've seen me in it on the post-game show. The white camo sweater has been a constant in my rotation as it's gotten cooler out these days. I'm going to pick up a pair of joggers. Maybe get one for Al after our Zoom debacle tonight. That's something we teased on the show. So all kinds of Legends gear in rotation. You saw me at the gym in the T-shirt. I love the jogging shorts. They're perfect for the kind of workouts I do, running through the streets when it's good weather. And the sweatshirt, of course, is going to stabilize that a little bit as it gets to be bad out here. Garden 20 is the code you want to use at legends.com. It really is. All of our panelists there on the Garden Report love this gear, and athletes do as well. Marcus Morris among them, the former Celtic. So check out the list of athletes wearing it, and check out their selection on legends.com and get 20% off and help the Garden Report while you're doing it. Celtics 98, Magic 97, a come from behind win, but many unanswered questions here at TD Garden around these Boston Celtics with 3 preseason games left to go. I'm Bobby Manning. We'll see you next time.